So I hate selling, and I always have. I'm an introvert, and the idea of traditional sales advice and the language around it, having to close and prospects and all that stuff, has just never sat comfortable with me. And yet in 2025, I sold €100,000 plus of my services. And strangely, when I think about it, what really escalated the growth of my freelance business was my approach to sales. It was the moment I stopped trying to be the person who was selling that my freelance business became calmer and more stable and started to really grow. So what do? I don't even think of them as sales calls, and I try not to label them as sales calls. I just see them as conversations. And so someone books time with me, and what I try and do rather than convince them to work with me is just get a read on where they're at, what they're trying to achieve and what they want to do. And then I have a really honest conversation with them based on my knowledge and my experience. So I move completely away from trying to convince them to work with me, and I try and look for if it's a fit. And that will depend on a number of things, but often it can come down to, is the language that they're using aligned with what I can offer? Are their expectations realistic? Is there something that they're looking for that's a quick fix or very fast results? And when one of those things don't align, I often tell them, not to work, not to hire me. That sounds crazy, but I have told people before, your best first step here is not to hire me. It's to go and do DIY style, do it yourself, or maybe look at something more affordable so you can test the water. And in that way, I'm just completely honest when I get on calls with people. It's never about trying to convince them. And that's really worked for me, because what I end up with is long-term customers who I'm aligned with, who see the value I bring, and who I see have a long-term vision. And that means that I'm not constantly chasing new clients, new customers. I would say about 80+% of my customers have been with me for over a year. There's another huge percentage that have been with me over 2 years. And this comes from, not trying to sell with every person I speak to. And the problem I see with other freelancers who are very good at selling and could literally sell ice to Eskimos, who could get anybody on a call who's interested in their freelance service and convince them to hire them, which is a great skill, don't get me wrong. But the problem that I see with that is that the churn is really fast. Those clients don't stay very long because their expectations don't match. They get into a contract or an agreement with somebody, and that person has expected the results to be a lot more or a lot faster. And with that, they don't stick around very long and are gone, and that freelancer is then back in selling mode. So what happens when you're good at sales and you're able to convince anybody to buy from you is your job becomes sales. And that's not for me. I don't want to be the person who is always selling and just lining up client after client. What I enjoy is actually working hands-on with content and with, for me, it's podcast production or video editing. I still really enjoy the hands-on work. Now, if you have an agency model and you're very good at selling and you're passing, the clients onto a team, it's a different thing. But I do think, again, you're just going to get stuck in that selling mode. And I want to, I'm sharing on this channel how I've created a one-person business and made it really sustainable and have a income level that I'm really happy with, and also a lifestyle that I'm happy with, where I don't overwork and I get time with my family and all that good stuff. And this is one of the core parts, to make sure I get clients who are aligned in what I can deliver for them. The fact that they can see it as this is a collaboration, that they have a similar mindset to me, that we speak in a similar way. We have sometimes similar interests, all that stuff that makes you align with somebody. And that means you can deliver better work and they're going to stick with you for a long time. And that has been the backbone of how I can sell €100,000 worth of service in a year. A lot of that, or vast majority of that, is repeat custom. And the reframe that, really helped me is, if you need to convince somebody, then they're probably not your client. And I don't think sales is about getting somebody to say yes. Not when you're an introvert or a freelancer like me who wants to be doing hands-on work. It's about finding out whether they should say yes. So this approach is slower, it's quieter, and it looks a lot worse on the surface, but over time it compounds because there's less churn, there's less pressure, and there's more calm. And clients stay with you for a longer time because they're the right clients. So how can you build any business if you can't sell? Well, I actually can sell. I just do it in a very different way. And it's maybe a way that isn't talked about enough, or that people don't realize is available. But I think in modern day, when everybody I speak to is very savvy about, not being sold to. I think people don't like being sold to anymore. So I think there's a little hidden advantage in this as well. That modern day selling is not about trying to convince somebody. It's really about finding an alignment. And when you find that, it just leads to better results for both sides. And I think that's what it's all about. So if you're like me, you're a bit of an introvert, or you're not great at selling, or you don't particularly enjoy selling, use whatever experience you have and just get used to being really honest with people. Give them advice on calls, even if it means they're not going to hire you. I do that all the time. And because it's a practice. So, if somebody, you get to a point on a call where you feel, I know this isn't going to be a customer, I don't just cut them off. I get in the practice of saying, maybe here's what you should look at. Maybe here's the approach that might help. Sometimes a year or two down the line, that person who you gave solid advice to when it was too early for them to hire a producer may come back to you. But it's a practice of getting used to just being super honest with people. I'm certain that's how I've such a high rate of customers who stay with me for a long, long time. And yeah, I think this is a different way of selling, and I encourage you to try it and see what results you get.